Perhaps the most damning piece of evidence that the 200 million will be Islamic is that Islamic prophecies themselves speak of a day when a messianic figure called the Mahdi will lead Muslims in a huge victory against all white Europeans, including Americans. So it's on their agenda to do this very thing, and indeed historically, Islam has been spread by nothing but intimidation and violence. The only problem with the theory that the sixth trumpet represents an Islamic uprising is that it's hard to conceive of Islamic nations being able to coordinate themselves and raise such an organized military machine capable of such destructive force at this point in human history. They fight with themselves as much as they do with anyone else. However, we know that the Muslim Brotherhood are currently trying to consolidate power in that region in the wake of the Arab Spring, and that part of that process means clearing out the Middle East of Christians. And if we take the 4 key Euphrates countries one by one, we see that Iraq has already been through a revolution, Syria is currently involved in one, and Iran has always been openly hostile to the West anyway. It has been intent on obtaining nuclear weapons for some time now, and certainly the biblical description of fire, smoke and burning sulfur puts us in mind of a nuclear attack. We can also understand that nuclear devices are becoming smaller, easier to conceal, and can be detonated from within containers as small as suitcases. In other words, regardless of how well Islamic nations will coordinate themselves in future, the theory could still hold water even today if we understood it as a terrorist attack rather than a traditional war. What about Turkey? They're a relatively moderate, even secular country at the moment, but keep an eye on them and watch for that to change. It will be very interesting if the Muslim Brotherhood instigate a revolution in that nation. Another point of interest in this passage about the 200 million is that it says of the army, their power was in their mouths and in their tails, for their tails had heads like snakes with the power to injure people. That's interesting when we consider that Isaiah, while talking about an end-time attack on Israel, says, the prophet who teaches lies is the tail. He equates tails with false prophets. Revelation says that these tails have heads like snakes, and since snakes are often representations of Satan, we seem to be talking about demonically inspired prophets raising the army. Certainly this does no harm to the Islamic hypothesis, especially when we consider that the ultimate authority in Islamic nations doesn't lie with the political authorities, but rather with the ayatollahs, the religious leaders, the Islamic prophets. This is especially true of Iran, where the chief ayatollah is given the title Supreme Leader of Iran. It's also interesting that Jesus, when talking about the same end-time attack on Israel, says, I have told you these things so that you won't abandon your faith, for you will be expelled from the synagogues, and the time is coming when those who kill you will think they are doing a holy service for God. This is because they have never known the Father or me. Who else but Muslims would kill in the belief that they are doing a holy service for God? We'll pick up on this hypothesis again later on when we explore the end-time attack on Israel in greater depth. That's what the seventh trumpet largely focuses on. In the meantime, John gives us a general picture of the world at this time, saying, But the people who did not die in these plagues still refused to repent of their evil deeds and turn to God. They continued to worship demons and idols made of gold, silver, bronze, stone and wood, idols that can neither see nor hear nor walk, and they did not repent of their murders or their witchcraft or their sexual immorality or their thefts. Throughout the Old Testament, we often see God trying to wake Israel up by allowing them to be attacked, plundered, and even taken into captivity. Suffering is often God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Yet, even after this loudest of warnings, mankind remains unrepentant. They could repent, salvation is still available to them, it's just that they've become so stubborn and hard-hearted that they don't want to. This puts us in mind of Pharaoh also when the plagues were coming upon Egypt. No matter how much pain he was in, no matter how much destruction befell Egypt, he kept hardening his heart. That's like the world in these last times. The mentions of idols of gold, silver, bronze, stone and wood also bring to mind materialism amongst the people of the world. People will be lovers of money and possessions. Foolishly, they will prefer hopeless nothings, perishable idols to God. Murder will be rampant on the earth too. The law of the jungle will prevail. The word witchcraft here may well describe New Ageism and occult practices too. Since the original Greek word is pharmakia, from which we get our word pharmacy, it may also describe drug taking. Pagan religions believe that taking drugs opens up their minds to new spiritual dimensions, so there's a close connection between drugs and the occult. This is a concept that has gained traction in the wider world since the 1960s. Finally, people will also be mired in sexual sin, reduced to following their basest instincts with no moral restraint. They will lie, steal, and defraud one another as a matter of course. It will be a society of self. Rampant secular humanism and materialism on one hand, rampant false religion on the other. The world is starting to take on those characteristics already.